We hesitated before telling this one, not because it's dramatic, but because it's quiet in the places where damage actually happens. Isabel Carter's story isn't about the moment everything exploded. It's about the moment she realized it already had. This is how she remembers it. The letter was already open when my parents walked into my old bedroom. I had read it 3 times by then, slow enough to make sure my eyes weren't lying to me. University of Pennsylvania, medical school, fall start. The kind of acceptance that doesn't arrive by accident, or luck, or someone else pulling strings. I'd earned it inch by inch, shift by shift, year by year. I was sitting on the edge of the bed I grew up in, the quilt still tucked in tight like my mother never expected me to leave for good. My father stood in the doorway longer than he needed to, one hand on the frame, not angry, not smiling, just braced. That was the first sign. My mother came in behind him, softer, already reaching for my arm like she could feel what was coming before I did. We need to talk about the fund. The word landed wrong, not heavy, empty, like it didn't belong in the room with the letter still warm in my hands. What about it? They looked at each other. That was the second sign. My father cleared his throat. He does that when he's decided something without asking. We had to use it. I remember staring at the word use, trying to find where it fit. Use it for what? For Charlotte, my mother said. Her voice stayed calm, practiced. She got into trouble again. We handled it. Again. That word had a history. How much? My voice sounded steadier than I felt. All of it. My father answered, one clean sentence. No apology attached. The room went quiet in a way that made my ears ring. I did the math automatically, like my brain was trying to protect me. $185,000. Tuition, rent, time, every morning shift. Every weekend I didn't leave town. Every night I stayed in instead of sleeping. That wasn't yours, I said. Not loudly, just clear. My mother squeezed my arm. Family comes first. I pulled back before she could say anything else. Then why does it feel like I was the only one you were willing to lose? Neither of them answered. My father's jaw tightened. My mother looked down at the carpet like it might offer a better explanation than they could. We've heard that sentence before. Not the words exactly, but the moment when someone finally names the role they were assigned without consent. My father straightened. You're strong. You'll figure it out. There are loans, deferments. I looked at the letter again. My name printed at the top. Not theirs. Mine. I folded it once. Carefully. Like if I moved too fast. Something else might tear. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just realized that the future I thought I was holding had already been spent. If this story settles somewhere familiar for you, take it with you. Sometimes listening quietly is how people realize they're not alone. They didn't leave after that. My parents stayed standing there like the room belonged to them again, like I hadn't just turned it into something fragile. My father crossed his arms. My mother sat on the edge of the bed, smoothing the quilt the way she always did when she was nervous. We didn't make this decision lightly. My father began. His voice took on that careful tone he used at work, the one meant to sound reasonable. Charlotte was in danger. This wasn't about preferences. It was about survival. I nodded once, not because I agreed, but because my body needed something to do. My hands felt useless. The letter rested against my thigh, folded now, like it was trying not to take up space. In danger, how? I asked. My mother answered instead. She owed people money, not the kind you can ignore. She was scared. That word landed differently. Scared. I'd been scared too, plenty of times, just not in ways they seemed to count. How much did she owe? I asked. My father hesitated. Just a beat. Enough. I let out a breath I hadn't meant to release. So you emptied my education trust. We used what was available, he said. It made sense. It made sense to you. My mother reached for my knee this time. I shifted before her hand could settle. She pulled it back slowly, like she'd touched something hot. Sweetheart, she said, softer now. You're resilient. You always have been. Charlotte. She's different. Different. That was the word they used when they didn't want to say fragile, or reckless, or protected. I worked for that money. I said, You know that. We know, my father replied, and we're proud of you. Proud. The word felt decorative, something you hang on a wall after the fact. What happens now? I asked. My father leaned against the dresser. You apply for deferment, loans. We'll help where we can. Help. After. And the trust. I said, Is it gone? My mother's mouth opened, then closed again. My father answered. Yes. I didn't react right away. I remember staring at the crack in the ceiling above my bed, the one that had been there since high school. I'd planned to fix it once I was done with exams. I'd forgotten about it completely. We noticed the way silence stretched there. Not dramatic, just heavy enough to make everyone wait for someone else to move first. You didn't even ask me, I said finally. My father's jaw tightened. There wasn't time. There was time to forge my name. The word hung between us. Forged. My mother flinched. My father didn't deny it. We thought we could fix it before you ever knew. He said. That was the moment something shifted. Not snapped. Just settled. I need air, I said. My mother stood quickly. Isabel, I just need air. I walked past them, down the hallway that still smelled faintly like old paint and laundry detergent. My legs felt steady. That surprised me. I made it to the back porch and stood there with the screen door rattling softly behind me. From inside, I could hear them talking in low voices, the way people do when they think the worst part is over. It wasn't. I stayed there until the night air cooled my face and my chest stopped feeling tight. I didn't know what came next yet, but I knew one thing clearly. They had already chosen. I didn't tell my parents where I was going the next morning. I drove with the radio off, hands tight on the wheel, replaying my father's voice in short, clipped pieces. We handled it. It made sense. There wasn't time. None of it lined up with how calm they'd looked when they said it. The bank was quiet in that weekday way. A few people spaced out, heads down. I stood in line longer than I needed to, reading the same pamphlet twice without absorbing anything. When it was my turn, the teller glanced at my name on the screen, paused, then looked up. Claire Donovan is available, she said. I'll let her know you're here. I followed her down a short hallway into an office with glass walls and a desk that was too neat to be comforting. Claire stood when she saw me. She didn't smile right away. That was the first thing that felt honest. You look like something's wrong, she said. I nodded. My parents used my education trust. Her eyebrows lifted, just slightly. She sat back down and turned her screen toward me. Let's look. She scrolled without speaking. The silence stretched. I watched her eyes move, quick and precise. Finally. She stopped. The total withdrawn wasn't $185,000, she said. It was $212,000. I leaned closer to the screen, like the numbers might rearrange themselves if I stared long enough. That's not possible. These withdrawals span multiple dates, she continued, and these authorization forms. Her finger hovered, then pulled back. They carry your signature. My chest tightened. I didn't sign anything. She nodded once. I didn't think you did. She clicked to another file. Security footage. The image was grainy but clear enough. My father stood at the counter, shoulders tense. Next to him, Charlotte, her hair pulled back, jaw clenched. Behind them, a man I didn't recognize. Taller. Still. Watching. Who is that? I asked. Claire's mouth pressed into a thin line. I can't discuss details, but this account triggered a suspicious activity report. The word suspicious felt heavier than it should have. I can tell you this, she added. This wasn't a one-time decision. It was a pattern. I sat back in the chair, my hands suddenly numb. The room felt smaller than it had a minute ago. We noticed how that moment didn't explode. It settled. The kind of settling that changes how someone walks out of a room. I need copies, I said. She nodded. I'll prepare everything. When I left the bank, the sun was too bright. I stood on the sidewalk longer than necessary, holding a folder that felt heavier than paper should. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about the distance between what I'd been told and what had actually happened. And that distance was starting to feel dangerous. Charlotte agreed to meet me that afternoon. She suggested the cafe near the park, the one she liked because no one ever stayed long. She was already there when I walked in, scrolling on her phone, coffee untouched. She looked tired in a way that didn't invite concern, more like an inconvenience she expected someone else to fix. She glanced up and smiled. Hey, you look intense. I sat across from her and placed the folder from the bank on the table. I didn't open it yet. I wanted to hear her talk first. They took more than you said. I told her. She frowned. What do you mean? 212,000. Over time. Not one decision. She leaned back, crossed her arms. Dad handled it. You were there. I said, I saw the footage. Her eyes flicked away, then back. So what? I didn't sign anything. No. I said, you just stood there. She exhaled through her nose, like I was being dramatic. Isabel, this is spiraling. You need to calm down. The word calm landed wrong. I felt it in my jaw before I felt it in my chest. Who was the man with you? I asked. She hesitated. Just long enough. Someone who said he could help. With what? Everything. She said. The debt. The pressure. The people who don't wait patiently. I watched her fingers tap against the cup. Not shaking. Controlled. You were exporting data, I said. From your job. Her eyes snapped up. You don't know that. I know enough. Silence settled between us. The barista called out an order behind the counter. Someone laughed near the door. Life kept moving. I didn't think it would get this far, Charlotte said finally. It started small. It always does. I said. She rolled her eyes. You always do this. You turn everything into a lecture. I'm not lecturing. I'm trying to understand why you thought this was okay. She leaned forward then, voice lower. Because I knew they'd fix it. They always do. And what about me? She shrugged. Not exaggerated. Casual. You'll be fine. The words hit harder than I expected. You always land on your feet, she continued. You're good at that. You've got discipline, options. I felt something tighten behind my eyes, but I didn't let it out. So that makes it okay to take what wasn't yours. She scoffed. It wasn't like you were going to starve. We noticed the moment when the conversation stopped being about money and became about belief. I needed that trust. I said, I planned my life around it. And I needed time. She replied, I needed space to breathe. I opened the folder then, slid one page toward her. She didn't look at it. You let them forge my name, I said. Her mouth opened, then closed again. They didn't ask me, but you didn't stop them. She stood up abruptly, chair scraping. You're acting like I did this to you on purpose. I'm acting like you assumed I'd absorb it. I said, like always. She grabbed her bag. I don't have the energy for this. As she walked toward the door, she glanced back once. I really am sorry it landed on you. Landed like weather. She left without finishing her coffee. I stayed where I was, staring at the page she never touched. The signatures, the dates, the proof that this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern, and I was done pretending it was temporary. My father called that night. I let it ring twice before answering, like delaying might change what he was about to say. It didn't. We need to be careful, he began. His voice was lower than usual, controlled, the way he spoke when he was already managing outcomes. There are things happening you don't fully understand. I understand enough, I said. A pause. I pictured him standing in the kitchen, phone to his ear, staring at nothing. If anyone contacts you, he continued, you don't speculate. You don't volunteer information. You let us handle it. Handle it how? Another pause. Shorter this time. By keeping this contained, the word settled in my chest. Contained. Like the problem was a spill, and not people. If you talk, he added, quieter now. Your sister goes to prison. There it was, not shouted, not framed as a threat, just presented, like a fact I was supposed to accept. I leaned back against the wall, feeling the cool paint through my shirt. So that's the price. This isn't about price, he replied. This is about protecting family. I am family, I said. He didn't answer right away. When he did, his tone shifted, softer. You're strong. You can carry this. Charlotte can't. The words weren't cruel. That was the worst part. They were familiar. Something I'd been trained to hear as praise. I need time, I said. Be smart, he replied. Don't make this worse. The call ended without goodbye. I stood there longer than I needed to, phone still warm in my hand. My heart was steady. That surprised me. I'd expected shaking, panic, something louder. Instead, there was a clean, quiet line forming inside me. We recognized that moment, the one where the request for silence finally names itself as a demand. I sat down on the edge of the bed and opened the folder from the bank again. The dates, the signatures, the way my name looked when someone else had written it. I traced the letters with my finger. Slow. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother this time. Please don't say anything yet. We can fix this. Fix. Another word that assumed cooperation. I typed, erased, typed again, then locked the screen without sending anything. Outside, a car passed. Somewhere down the street, someone laughed. Ordinary sounds, carrying on without permission. I realized then that staying quiet wouldn't protect anyone. It would only keep things exactly as they were. And I was done carrying what had never been mine to hold. It didn't happen all at once. There were a few days where nothing seemed to move, where the house felt suspended. My parents spoke in careful tones. Charlotte stopped answering my texts. Every sound felt louder than it needed to be. The doorbell, the phone, the hum of the refrigerator at night. Then, one afternoon, a knock came that didn't pause. Firm. Measured, not angry, certain. My father answered it. I stayed where I was, halfway down the hall, close enough to hear, but not close enough to be seen right away. William Carter, a woman's voice said, calm, professional. Agent Laura Bennett. She stepped inside without waiting to be invited. Another person followed, quieter, already looking around like the room mattered. My mother stood up from the couch too quickly, knocking over a pillow. This is a mistake, she began. We haven't done anything wrong. Agent Bennett didn't react to that. Her eyes moved instead, taking in the space, family photos, the bookshelf, the framed certificate my father liked to keep visible. We're here regarding a series of financial transactions connected to an education trust, she said. We'd like to speak with everyone present. Charlotte came down the stairs then. Hair pulled back, face tight. She froze when she saw them. I didn't do anything, she said immediately. Agent Bennett turned toward her. You'll have an opportunity to clarify that. I stepped forward before anyone could stop me. I'm Isabel. She looked at me differently then. Not softer, clearer. You're listed as the primary beneficiary. Yes, and you did not authorize the withdrawals. No, she nodded once. Thank you. My father shifted. This is getting out of hand. Agent Bennett met his eyes. It's already in hand. We sat at the dining table. No one offered water. No one needed it. Questions moved around the room, careful and specific. Dates, access, who knew what, and when. When they asked about the signatures, my father's shoulders slumped just enough to notice. "We meant to replace the funds," he said. "We thought we had time." Agent Bennett wrote something down. "Time isn't a substitute for consent." Charlotte stared at the table, fingers pressed flat, like she was holding herself in place. We noticed how the room changed when the words became official. Not louder, quieter, as if everyone finally understood this wasn't a family discussion anymore. When the agents left, they didn't raise their voices or make promises. They handed over cards, next steps, expectations. My mother sat down slowly, like gravity had doubled. "We're still your parents," she said, looking at me. "You don't have to do this." I didn't. I said, "You did." That night, the house felt colder, not because of the weather, because no one knew how to speak without strategy anymore. I packed a small bag, clothes, documents, the folder from the bank. My father watched from the doorway. "Where are you going?" he asked. "Away," I said. "I won't sit here while you pretend I caused this." My mother reached for my arm. I stepped back before she touched me. "Please," she said. "Let us handle it. You handled it when you forged my name." I replied, "This part belongs to me." I counted the cash in my wallet before I zipped the bag. $92. Enough for gas. Enough for one night somewhere quiet. I walked out without slamming the door. The street was calm, ordinary. I stood there for a moment, letting the air settle around me, and kept walking. I stayed on Naomi's couch that night. She didn't ask for details, just handed me a blanket and a mug that smelled like chamomile and something burnt underneath. It wasn't perfect, but it was quiet, and that was enough. The call came the next morning. A man introduced himself as Daniel Mercer. His voice was even practiced, the kind that doesn't rush because it's used to being listened to. He asked if I had a moment to talk about my grandmother's trust. I stepped into the hallway so Naomi wouldn't hear. "I don't have much to add," I said. "It's gone." "That depends," he replied, "on what you consider gone." We met later that afternoon in a borrowed office space above a dry cleaner, the kind of place that smelled faintly like starch and old paper. He didn't waste time with pleasantries, just opened a folder and slid it across the table. "Your grandmother was careful," he said. "Not generous. Careful." I traced the edge of the page with my finger. Evelyn Prescott's name at the top. Steady handwriting. Familiar. She anticipated misuse. He continued. That trust wasn't just for education. It was a safeguard. He walked me through it slowly. Breach of fiduciary duty, penalties, interest, restitution tied to the federal investigation. No miracle clause. Just consequences stacking up where they were supposed to. "How much?" I asked. He gave a range, careful with his words. Enough to restore what had been taken, enough to move forward without borrowing against the rest of my life. I sat back, feeling something loosen in my chest. Not relief. Recognition. We noticed how that realization didn't come with joy. Just a quiet understanding that someone had believed her long before anyone else did. She didn't trust anyone with blind faith, Daniel added, including family. I smiled at that. Small, real. "What happens now?" I asked. "You cooperate," he said. "You stay clear, and you don't minimize what was done." When I left, the air outside felt different, not lighter, just steadier. Naomi looked up from her laptop when I came back in. "Good news," she asked. "Grounded news," I said. "The kind that holds?" She nodded like she understood exactly what that meant. That night, I pulled my grandmother's old photo from the bottom of my bag, the one where she's half smiling, eyes sharp, like she's watching something unfold a few steps ahead. I set it on the table beside me and let myself sit there for a while. Not alone, just finally supported by the silence she'd built on purpose. The courtroom felt smaller than I expected, not cramped, just contained. The benches were worn smooth, like too many hands had passed through already. I took a seat near the aisle, close enough to leave if I needed to, close enough to stay. Charlotte appeared on the screen first. Remote room, neutral background. Her hair was pulled back the same way she'd worn it at the cafe, like that version of her had followed us here. She didn't look at the camera at first. When she did, her eyes flicked past it, toward where she knew our parents were sitting. The prosecutor spoke calmly, almost gently, laying out dates and actions in a voice that didn't rise. When Charlotte answered, her words came out uneven, like she'd practiced them but not enough. "I thought I could buy time," she said. "I thought if I kept it moving, it wouldn't catch up." My father sat rigid in the front row. My mother twisted a tissue until it came apart in her hands. No one touched anyone. When the forged signatures were mentioned, my father's shoulders dropped. Not all the way. Just enough to notice. "I believed I was protecting my daughter," he said when it was his turn. "I didn't intend to harm anyone." The prosecutor nodded. "Intent doesn't erase impact." That sentence landed harder than anything shouted in our house. They asked me to stand. I felt my legs move before my mind caught up. The microphone was already adjusted, waiting. "I didn't know," I said, "not until after it was done. I built my plans around that trust. I didn't consent to losing it." My voice didn't shake. "That surprised me. Did you feel pressured to remain silent?" the prosecutor asked. I glanced at my parents, then back ahead. Yes. We noticed how the room held still during that word. Pressured. Not dramatic. Accurate. Charlotte spoke again. "She should hate me," she said. Eyes glossy now. I wouldn't blame her. I looked at the screen. "I don't hate you," I said. "But you made choices, and I lived inside them." No one interrupted. Even the judge waited a beat longer than necessary. The rulings came without ceremony. Cooperation noted, sentencing scheduled, restitution ordered. My father would avoid prison but not responsibility. My mother was directed toward counseling, the kind meant to untangle patterns that don't show up in records. As we stood to leave, my father turned toward me. His mouth opened, then closed again. Outside, the hallway was bright in that institutional way, lights too clean for what had just happened. I stood there for a moment, letting the noise of other cases pass around me. Agent Bennett walked by, slowed. "You did what you needed to," she said. No praise, just acknowledgement. I nodded. My parents exited behind me, together but not touching. Charlotte's image had already gone dark. I stepped toward the door, not rushing, not lingering. For the first time, the truth wasn't chasing me. It was behind me, on record, exactly where it belonged. The letter arrived on a gray morning, slipped under Naomi's door like something that didn't want attention. I opened it at the kitchen counter, still in socks, coffee cooling beside me. Approved restitution. The amount written out in careful language came to just under $450,000, enough to restore what had been taken, enough to let the future breathe again. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just stood there until the room felt steady. A week later, my parents asked to meet. Therapy, mediation, a chance to repair things. I listened without interrupting, then shook my head. Not because I was angry, because I was finished negotiating my worth. I'm done proving I deserved protection. I told them. The words felt settled by the time they reached my mouth. I signed a lease for a small studio in Jersey City. One window, a radiator that knocked at night, space that belonged only to me. When I moved in, I carried my boxes up alone, not out of pride, just because no one else needed to. UPenn confirmed my start date soon after. Orientation in the fall. I walked the campus once before classes began, sat in the back of an empty lecture hall, and opened a new notebook. The page was blank. That mattered. I wrote my name at the top, Isabel Carter. Slow, deliberate, no rush. Later, back in my apartment, I unpacked the last box. At the bottom was a photo of my grandmother, Evelyn Prescott, half smiling like she knew something I didn't yet. I placed it on the shelf by the window. What stayed with me wasn't the money or the courtroom or even the silence that followed. It was the moment I realized I could step out of a role without asking permission. Isabel Carter learned that choosing herself didn't make her colder. It made her clearer. If this story reached you in a quiet moment, carry it gently. Sometimes listening is enough to recognize what has already changed.